Hey, the next speaker is Joe Burns. Mr. Joe Burns is a lifelong entrepreneur in industries ranging from entertainment to the real estate industry. He is the chair of the Libertarian Party up in Llano County and a state Libertarian Executive Committee representative for Senate District 24, which is our neighbors right up here to the north. He works in the development department of the Libertarian Party of Texas, and he, most importantly, he's probably like my future cellmate because him and I both prefer a very unapologetic, no-holds-barred advance to promoting change. Joe, come on up. Put your hands together, please. Joe Burns.
All right, guys. I didn't have time to memorize my speech, so I think it's going to benefit us all if I stick to the script, or we'll be here for an hour. So, excuse me while I dig this out. So, the Texas Freedom Force, you guys are great. I appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate the fact that you keep the eyes on the people that don't respect liberty anymore. So, I'm glad you guys got a chance to come out. So, everybody knows why we're here. Stop the steal. That's pretty common. I didn't want to be here today. In fact, I'd pretty much like to be anywhere else but here on a Saturday afternoon. My RV's parked in Florida right now. I should be on a beach in West Florida taking dive lessons from some beautiful woman who's been paid handsomely to put up with my personality. But I'm here instead, just like many of you, because I feel obligated, because this shit pisses me off, to be frank. Sure, I could have come home to see family and friends, but I would have come back in a month from now. If you don't know, I'm also an insurance adjuster, and I was there helping people recover from the hurricane. Feeling compelled to fight these fights, it becomes an outrage. For those of you that are activists that do these things on a regular basis, these things just piss us off to our core. But there are so many things these days to be outraged about. 5 minutes on social media will show you any number of things. You just can't keep up. So you have to decide, what am I going to take a stand against? What am I going to throw my hat in the ring and fight? So as an active member of the Libertarian Party, as an executive committee member on the state party, I have to apportion my time accordingly and try to get the biggest bang for my buck that I can. So I have to make the determination, what is most important? What fights are going to be the most valuable to liberty in the long term? Which ones are going to make a difference? You've probably heard of the story of the little boy on the beach. He's walking along the beach. Old man's in the distance, sees him. Sees the boy picking things up and throwing them into the ocean. It's the morning after a big storm. So the old man, when the boy gets a little closer, he asks the little boy, he says, "What are you doing?" He said, What's going on? How you doing there? He's like, "Well, I'm throwing these starfish back into the ocean because, sun's up, tide's out, they're going to die." The old man says, "Man, there's miles of beach and there's thousands of starfish. There's no way you're going to be able to make a difference." Little boy bends down, picks another one up, throws it back in the ocean, looks up at the old man and says, "I made a difference to that one." Yeah. Mr. Cantu's property, Mr. Cantu's family, they deserve our efforts. They deserve our time. I haven't even got the pleasure of meeting the man yet, but when I read about his story, it compelled me to stay in Texas and fight this fight and skip going back to work for a little while. Because I can tell you that what we're doing today will make a difference to Mr. Cantu and his family. We will apply the appropriate amount of pressure to the politicians. They may still end up taking his land, but we will make them pay the price. When I choose what to fight for, I also want to have as great an impact on others as possible for the time I expend. Efficiency is important to me. When it comes to charity, I used to donate in silence. Now, I donate and I'm loud about it because I want other people to be pressured into joining me, to multiply my efforts. And I do that with my political activism as well. If you're unaware, eminent domain is happening all around us. Since the Kelo decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, governments of all shapes and sizes have been emboldened to take what they want, when they want, and not look back. Hell, I even read where right here in San Antonio, on the same night they voted to take Mr. Cantu's property, they voted to eminent domain another man's property. This stuff is happening. You're just not seeing it that often because the press isn't covering it as much as they should. Again, too many things to be outraged about. So why this eminent domain case? I mean, I could spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week fighting nothing but eminent domain. With so many happening, I could be busy for the rest of my life. I mean, as you know, there are starfish everywhere. You might be surprised to learn the problem is so pervasive that there are attorneys that are now specializing in eminent domain cases. That's all they make their living off of, is fighting eminent domain. That's how bad the problem has become. This case, however, as you know, is on the hallowed grounds of the Alamo. The Gonzales flag, come and take it, makes this situation especially ironic, given the idea that men fought and died primarily to break away from an overburdensome, authoritarian federal government that took much and offered little in return. Sounds exactly like eminent domain to me.
That's right.
The irony is too great to miss, and plenty of news outlets have picked up on it too. I noticed just yesterday that Fox News finally ran a story on the Moses Roses situation. Us activists have worked hard to ensure the word gets out, that people take notice, so that ultimately Mr. Cantu gets treated more fairly than he was before we started. But this fight is greater than this one instance, and I choose to get involved specifically to help motivate people like you, like all of you that chose to show up today to take a stand, to stop this vile practice. Because what's to stop them from deciding that your property is what they want next? That your property is where they want to build that next road, even though they could go around. What happens when they come for each and every one of you? Who's going to be there? This whole thing reminds me of a poem you may be familiar with. It was written shortly after World War II by a Lutheran pastor. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and again, I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. The man that wrote this, you might be surprised to learn, was an anti-Semitic Nazi supporter whose mind got drastically changed when they imprisoned him in various concentration camps simply for speaking out against Nazi control of the churches. Think about that for a second. This man hated the Jews, and he come to find out that an authoritarian government was a far greater enemy than any one of his fellow men.
Satan's the enemy.
Hear, hear.
Satan is the enemy.
You know, this is fundamentally why the Libertarian Party is so focused on individual rights. Because if the government cannot oppress an individual, they cannot oppress a group, no matter which group you choose to be a part of. We do not see it. I say we, the Libertarian Party. We do not see this as a left versus right issue. We see the problems that face us as authority versus liberty. And we've chosen what side of that fight we're on. And so I choose to speak out, and I hope to motivate you to do the same. Now, as to the point at hand here today, there are two things that exist in this country right now that prove to each and every one of you that you can't own land. There is no land ownership in the United States of America. Don't be fooled. But you might say, Joe, my name's on my deed to my home. Well, it might be. But there are two things that prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that you don't really own that land. Obviously, eminent domain. Can anybody guess the second?
Everything.
Property tax. All right, cool. We got more libertarians in the crowd than I thought.
Everything. It's God's green earth.
As long as those two things
What
exist,
about these babies that got family punches and stuff?
Yeah! For freedom!
so essentially you're just renting your land or borrowing it with the illusion that you own it until the government decides it's time for them to take it.
Jesus owns it all.
If the state can take our land whenever they want, you never really owned it. And as to the property tax, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but suffice it to say that if you can pay off your land free and clear and somehow live to see retirement, and then have your property tax raised to the point you can't afford to pay it, the government will step in and take your land and sell it to pay their taxes. How in the hell could that ever be considered American? How have we gotten to where we are today? We're currently telling the state to find another way, and fortunately it's resounding with a few of them, handful of Republicans, one or two Democrats, with the backbone to champion that effort. But when it comes to eminent domain, we haven't been nearly as fortunate. In the case at hand, we see a Republican, Dawn Buckingham, who happened to be my House rep years ago. I've watched her climb the corporate political ladders. But we see a Republican at the state level walking hand in hand with Democrats at the city level to commit this travesty. And let me tell you, one of the quickest ways I know I'm about to get fucked is when they start working together. Now, boys and girls, JR mentioned this earlier, but I want to reiterate. When you take something that is not yours, that's theft. That's bad. I also never thought that I would see the day where I had to explain that to any living adult, let alone a 10-year-old, but apparently Don wasn't paying attention in preschool. Neither was the city councilor, at least none of them. And save me the bullshit spewed by the current and former land commissioners. I don't know if you paid attention on Twitter, but they've been going at Mr. Cantu, implying that he's greedy and trying to take advantage of the taxpayers by asking too high a price. That shit makes me sick, man. I don't give a good goddamn if you leave him $100 million. He did not want to sell. That shit's still theft. If you break into my home and steal my TV and leave $100 on the counter, you still stolen it. The only difference in state law is I can shoot your ass on the way out. These people want to paint Mr. Cantu as hurting the public, as taking advantage. The only people hurting the public are these politicians because they refuse to even form a different plan. If you followed this, they haven't even tried to create another plan that works without his land. They haven't even tried to just go approach the willing sellers and do what it takes. Now, as a lifelong entrepreneur, let me tell you, that's just bad business. I don't know who this private development company, I haven't met them. I'm sure there's some smart people, but they've got blinders on. As an entrepreneur, if you're not prepared for every eventuality, you're going to go broke or you're never going to get the loan to start your business in the first place. The problem with these people is it's government money. So, you know how that goes. It's time to put a stop to this practice. Make no mistake, guys, this is tyranny. This is what tyranny looks like. This is the 20th and 21st century's version of tyranny right before your eyes. George Washington, some of our founding fathers, they would have been stacking bodies by now. But we're out here in a peaceful protest. Make sure you get that straight. We are peaceful. Trying to convince them, using their laws and their courts and attorneys, to do the right thing. Another thing I don't understand about this whole thing is when they haven't explored other plans, when you start, I know a lot of you probably haven't done any real estate development, but if you ever try to build a subdivision, you typically have to be under contract under the land first. You've got to know that you even have access to land or the ability to own the land before you even start your planning. From the very beginning, these guys have just assumed they were going to get his land without even talking to him because they knew the law was on their side. They knew that if they couldn't get it for the price that they wanted, they just take the shit and give him whatever they felt like giving him, which is what we're in the middle of watching go down today. Also, they can build a tourist trap, some 4D theater, a museum, which, you know, hey, maybe that is good for the public. Maybe that's something that we need. Maybe that is in the public's best interest. But have they looked around? Have they tried to find any other possible place that they might put this thing? Any place really close to the Alamo that may already be owned by the public? Maybe some vacant land around. You guys see anything that might have worked for this theater? Jesus, guys, we're standing on a couple of acres of public property right here. But do they consider putting it here? No. The park's got to stay. Vince is the one that's got to go. I'll pause, guys, because I get so angry. I have to reel in what I might say, because this does piss me off to the core. But as I said, I sincerely hope that we can bring a peaceful resolution to this. I hope that we can put the pressure on the politicians to convince them to do the right thing. We'll never convince Don and the last commissioner and some of these politicians that what they're doing is wrong. We're not going to convince them of that. But we can put enough pressure on them. We can, as Justin said, hit that pain point. Make it become bad cost-benefit analysis for them. Put a price on this. Until that price is so high they're not willing to pay and they relent. That's what activism can do. I've seen it happen since I joined the Libertarian Party, since I finally got off of my entrepreneurial ass and engaged with the political spectrum. We can move mountains. Each and every one of you can do that. And the QR codes, just as an aside, I'm going to interrupt my speech a little bit. The QR codes that these guys have signs on, make sure that you get a picture of that. That's going to evolve it's got a setup right now, currently kind of almost a rough draft where you can start if you're encouraged and you want to act today. But tomorrow and over the next several days, we're going to continue to evolve that document as we determine what the highest quality steps are that you can take. So if you have 5 minutes to give, 2 hours to give, you can start at the top and start working your way down and help apply the pressure needed to solve this situation. One last thing. You know, we used to have a lot of people in this country that were willing to fight and die to stop communism, to stop tyranny. And we still have a few. Make no mistake, this is tyranny. And while I pray this situation can be worked out peacefully, please don't ignore that last bit. I do sincerely hope we can bring this to a peaceful conclusion, and then we can convince the government forces to pay a price Mr. Cantu and his family can live with to adequately compensate them for the theft that they are enduring. Make no mistake, I, for one, stand ready to defend his property until my dying breath, and I know plenty of other rednecks willing to do the same. If, like the Mexican government once did, this government pushes us too far, if Mr. Cantu decides he's unwilling to accept the pittance offered as consolation for that theft, and he chooses to take a stand, if that day comes, I will be here. I have pledged my life, everything I own, and all of my armaments to this man to defend this. If these fucking tyrants want to take it, we can play Alamo 2.0. We can play come and take it if they push us to that point. I'll leave you with one last saying, a saying I picked up a long time ago. I'm not a very educated man, and I don't know a lot of Latin, but I know one phrase, and it's stuck with me since I Googled it years ago. And if you're unfamiliar with it, please look it up, because it used to stand as a stark reminder to tyrants and politicians across the globe for hundreds of years, wherein they might have faced a guillotine if they pulled some shit like this. Today, it's lost a lot of its value, but for some of us hardcore types, for some of us true patriots, and let me make it clear, patriotism is not love of government, it's love of your country. And I love this country, and I love each and every one of you so much that I would put everything I've got on the line to defend your liberty. I don't care who you are, I don't even care if I don't like you. But when these politicians come to take our land, when they come to drop their tyranny at our doorstep, they need to remember, sic semper tyrannis.
Sic semper tyrannis. Let's keep it going for Joe Burns.